For me? Really? Okay. Ooh. Midsummer offerings. I like offerings. Ooh. Ooh. 3 toenails and a deceased bug. 3 toenails and a deceased bug. What kind of offering do you call that? No, indeed. Now you go and find proper offerings, because 3 toenails and a deceased bug are not an appropriate offering. You find me better midsummer offerings. Hello. How are you? How are you? It's midsummer. Midsummer. And you know what midsummer means? Midsummer means parties. Parties. Midsummer means going into the woods. Going into the woods for a picnic on midsummer's night. Love the picnics. Moonlit picnics, and we all come out and we play in the forest. Even Hades comes out. What do you mean, my horns? I really, there's something on them. I'm sure there's something on them. I fell asleep on the couch and I can't see, but I think they did something to my horns. But it's midsummer, so I'm in too good a mood to be too cross with them. Unless they don't bring me a better offering, in which case then all hell breaks loose. Proper offerings, and no, a mouse skull is not a proper offering. So, because it is the midsummer solstice holiday, and we are celebrating the midsummer solstice, I'm bringing you the Midsummer's Night Dream. Now, I had to make some changes with this play. I had to make some changes. So you know how this play is supposed to have the mechanicals, who are just ordinary people who want to put on a play. Well, it turns out that when your performance company is the Milwaukee Family Players, is like that every day. So for the joke to work, I had to bring in some of my demons to play that role. That's funny. That's funny, watching demons do that. That's a lot more funnier. But we'll get to that in the end, in due course. But A Midsummer's Night Dream takes place in ancient Greece. My world takes place in ancient Greece. But it seems to have some funny ideas of what ancient Greece was like. I'll get to that too. And it is taking part at the wedding of Theseus. Yeah, boo, yes, we don't like Theseus. I'll explain that later too. And Hippolyta, who's an Amazon. Now, Theseus and Hippolyta are preparing for their wedding. Not that anyone should be happy to be married to Theseus. He has a real tendency to lose wives. He's had a lot of them, and he's not even a real proper hero because none of the gods like him. He's just a very nasty man. We don't like Theseus. He keeps talking and saying that he's a hero, but really he's not. He keeps saying Poseidon's his father, but Poseidon will own up to all manner of creatures, but not him, which means he's not. Anyway, Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding. And the wedding's going to happen in a few days. And before the wedding happens, Aegisthus comes in complaining that his daughter Hermia will not marry Demetrius, who he has chosen for her to marry, but instead wants to marry Lysander, who her father doesn't agree to, and he wants Theseus to adjudicate this kerfuffle. So Theseus, because he's a bastard, well, really, seriously, he is, because he's a bastard, says that, Hermia, you either marry Demetrius, or you become a nun, or you be put to death. I mean, seriously, what kind of rubbish choices are those? He thinks he's being wise. He's not being wise. He's a sad little man. Sad, sad little man. And Hermia doesn't like this. And Lysander points out that Demetrius has been courting Helena, who is also a fine lady of Athens, but for whom, as soon as Hermia came on the scene, boom, I'm going to go for her because she's like the popular girl, and dumps his girlfriend to do this. And so he's pushing himself in all the wrong places. And basically he's a bum. He's a bum. So because Theseus's crap judgment, yes, I said it, his crap judgment, because of his poor judgment, Hermia and Lysander decide that they're going to nick off out of Athens, out of the Duke's rule, and have their own lives. Good on them. Good on them. But they have to pass through the wood. They're going to go at night because it's Midsummer's night, and it's a light night because there's a big moon, and it's the solstice. And Hermia tells her friend Helena, big mistake, big mistake. So that's this little plan. In town, a group of tradespeople, or in my case, a group of demons, I basically go round and say, you're being the demons. And so they just go by their own names. Except for the one who plays bottom. There's one who enjoys playing bottom. So we do that, and it really freaks out the Milwaukee family players where they have to, Tanya has to, canoodle up to one of my nastier demons. They are here for punishment after all. So they are organising to perform a play for the upcoming wedding, because they're hoping to be picked for the wedding and to have a prize and have money and be all, made gentlemen, I think. Okay, the demons are basically doing it because I told them to, and I do give them a few more scraps of food, so that they do it. If they do it bad, I flay them, so, fun all round. But so they're organising this, but they can't perform in town because everyone will see them, and they're really worried, like any amateurs, that they're going to get ripped off, because who's going to rip them off? So they decide that they're going to go into the forest, same forest, tonight, and perform, because the moon is shining and it's the short night and it's the light night and it's midsummer, and so it's all pleasant in the forest. It's not like you're going out there in midwinter, you'll freeze to death. So we now have two lots of groups going into the forest. In the forest, there are faeries. I'm not really sure what faeries are. They don't see that. I think they must be some kind of nymphs or something from up north, because I've never met any fairies before. They seem like they're a bit of fun, but I've never met fairies before. Fairies seem to be this like weird semi-deities. I don't know, but they're fairies. And the king of the fairies and the queen of the fairies, Oberon, king of the fairies, and Titania, queen of the fairies, are having a squabble over a changeling child. And a changeling child, apparently what they do is they nick really pretty children and leave an icky child behind. And then they bring up the really pretty children themselves. Seems a lot of bother to go to for a pretty mortal. But I'll tell you about a little story about that in a bit. Now, so Titania refuses to let Oberon have the pretty child because she says he's really important to me and yada, yada, yada. And she leaves in a huff, and Oberon hangs about with his little mate, Puck. Now, from what I can tell, Puck seems to be Hermes. My brother, cousin Hermes. So I probably ought to ask him who these fairies are, because I think they're Hermes Friends. Wouldn't put it past Hermes to have weird friends like that. I mean, seriously, weird friends. But Hermes, of course, is our resident thief. He also brings souls down here so they don't get lost. But he sends messages up and down. So we see him quite a bit. He comes down here quite a lot. He's quite nice. Just don't trust him with the silverware or anything worth nicking. That's generally speaking. I mean, he managed to nick all of Apollo's cattle he couldn't even crawl. Before he could even crawl, he nicked all the cattle. He's a devious little thing, my cousin brother Hermes. But anyway, he's good-natured enough. So I think he's Puck. So anyway, Theseus is not Theseus. Oberon is talking to Puck. And as he's talking to Puck, he tells Puck, I have a plan to get this child from Titania. And he sends Puck off halfway around the world, which is why I think he's Hermes, because Hermes is very, very fast, to get a magic flower. And the magic flower makes you fall in love with anything you see. So he sends Puck off to get this flower. While Puck is off getting this flower, he sees Helena and Demetrius walking through the woods. Now he sees Helena, and Helena is following Demetrius, and Demetrius is cursing her and telling her to go back home because she told Demetrius what Hermia and Lysander were doing, and now Demetrius has gone out into the forest and she's following him, and she has absolutely no self-respect. None. Zipper. Poor stupid creature. And so she's gone out and is following Demetrius as he is following Hermia and Lysander. And they pass through the woods, and when Puck returns and gives Oberon the flowers, Oberon gives him a flower and tells him there is a lovely maid walking through these woods with a nasty man. You will know them by the Athenian clothes that they're wearing. And you put this on his eyes so that when he sees the maid, he will fall in love with her. All good. Easy. Not many Athenians out in this wood. Usually. And so he goes and does this. Now, he goes to do this. Now, Oberon goes to where Titania is sleeping, and he puts the magic ointment on Titania's eyes so that says that when you awake, may you fall in love with the grossest, ugliest thing you see. And so therefore, I'll be able to get this changeling child off you while you're enamored of a bear or a boar or something. So that's what he does. In the meantime, Hermia and Lysander come into the wood, and they're very tired. They've got lost. They're stuck in the wood. It's really dark by now, and they go to sleep. But they don't sleep next to each other because no, somebody's a little bit picky about before their wedding. So obviously they sleep far away. This is a big mistake. Puck comes along and sees them sleeping apart and assumes this is the rough and mean man because he's dressed in Athenian clothes, and he puts the love potion on him. Helena comes along and sees Lysander and doesn't think he's asleep. She wonders if he might be dead, and she wakes him up, and he looks at her and he falls in love with her, and she's really quite sort of like, oh, but you're not supposed to be in love with me. You're in love with Hermia. Why are you mocking me? And she runs off and leaves Hermia asleep on the ground. Meanwhile, my demons come in. My demons come in to do their play, and they're not very good. They're rehearsing their play. And as they're rehearsing their play, the fairies see them. And when Bottom goes off to rehearse his lines or whatever, he's quite bossy as Bottom. He likes to tell everybody else what to do. I usually have to stop the other demons from stabbing him. Yeah, because they really, really totally would. They totally would stab him, because he bosses them about like nothing else. And I tell them this is supposed to be a light comedy. You're not supposed to, nobody gets stabbed. Nobody gets stabbed. It's the one rule. So he goes and wanders off, and the fairies give him an ugly face, which really doesn't need to happen because they've all got ugly faces. And he comes back and he scares all the others off, and they run, and he wakes up Titania with his singing. And Titania has to be in love with him. And he's always one of my ugliest demons. This is so funny. It's so funny watching her pretend to be in love with him because she's barely hold it together. Anyway, so she falls in love with him. Meanwhile, Hermia has been found by Demetrius, or has found Demetrius, and she accuses him of killing Lysander because when she woke up, Lysander was nowhere to be found. Demetrius decides, she goes off further into the forest, so he decides, I'm tired, I'm just going to go to bed because this is ridiculous and there's no reasoning with her. So he falls asleep, and Oberon, meanwhile, has seen, you messed up, Puck. You messed up. So bad did you mess up. Go find Helena and make sure she is here when this one awakes so that he can fall in love with her. So Puck goes off and finds Helena, and Oberon anoints him with the magic flowers. So when Puck brings back Helena and Demetrius awakes, and he is in love with Helena, Hermia comes in, and now all hell breaks loose. Because the girls squabble and the boys squabble, and Helena is convinced everybody is teasing her, and Hermia is convinced that Helena has somehow managed to wile her boyfriend away from her, and the whole thing is confusion, and they're yelling and screaming and clawing at each other. Oh, it's so good. And then the boys run off to go and fight a duel. So, meanwhile, up in her fairy bower, Titania is making her fairies. I really think they must be some kind of nymphs because I've never, ever, 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 ever seen fairies. Anyway, Titania is making her fairies look after Bottom. But given they're big and hairy and smelly and gross is quite fun. Watching all these poor little silly players try to, in fairy costumes, mind you, have to pretend to look after this big, stupid, hulking, stinky demon. Oh, he's so good. They look so gross now. He's so fun. Anyway, while she is all enamored of this beastie, Oberon comes along and says, "Can I have your changeling child?" And she is so in love that she just says, "Yes, fine, take it. I don't care." Which reminds me of the time that Auntie Aphrodite and I had a little bit of a spat over Adonis. So, let me explain Adonis. Adonis was the child of Mer. Mer was a girl who, I think it might have been Auntie Aphrodite. It was either her or Artemis. One of them did a really bitchy thing and made her fall in love with her in like lust with her father, who she then slept with, and then it was just like, ugh. And then she had to go and flee, and she was turned into a tree, but the tree was pregnant, and out of the tree came the bark split open, and out of the bark came this beautiful, beautiful baby, which Aphrodite decided to keep. She didn't just give it to a mortal family, she decided to keep. This is Adonis. So, because we can't go just keeping little mortal babies, she had to hide it. She had to hide Adonis. So where did she hide Adonis? Down here. She hid it down here. And he really was cute. Even I have to admit that. Not quite as cute as baby harpies, not quite as cute as Cerberus puppy, but he was cute. And so I looked after him. I'm quite capable of looking after them. And he had a lovely time down here with his Auntie Persephone. He had such a lovely time down here. He was great fun, little creature always running around. And so we had great fun, and he used to hang out with Dionysus. He used to have great fun with Dionysus. So, like drugs and rock and roll. What teenager doesn't want drugs and rock and roll? And he had a great sense of fashion. He'd dye his hair black and spike it all up, and lots of eyeliner and black and like he was just and like really, really cool clothes. He was great. Anyway, one day when he used to come up with me. He used to come up with me in spring. So it's not as if I just kept him trapped down. He used to come up with me in spring, and he'd have a great time up there with Auntie Aphrodite. And so he had a wonderful time. Anyway, one day she came down, and when he was 16, and like seriously, it's not a good phase for mortals, especially not mortal boys. They get all like, their voices go all, and that's all they say. They just go, and then they get all grumpy, and they want to do nothing but sleeps all day. And and it was a bit breaky-outy. I tried to get Apollo to give him a hand with that, but what can you do? It's hormones. Thank God we don't have hormones. But he was all 16-year-old, and like seriously, you cannot get them to bathe. You just can't get them to bathe. We'd take him down to Sticks, and he'd complain and say he doesn't need to. He did yesterday. And it's like, seriously, the demons are starting to complain about your stink. Go and bathe. What can you do? 16-year-olds. Anyway, she came down, and she was all like, I'm taking him away. You're not looking after him properly. And it's like, what do you think's going to happen when a 16-year-old cops an eye for, oh, great goddess of sex? Yeah, well, obviously he went off with her because, like, she got all mad. I said, look, he's fine. He's just a teenager. It's a phase. He'll be all good in, like, 2-3 years. Just, give it some time. But she killed Father Zeus down and got all uppity. And so he said that that Adonis can have 4 months with me, 4 months with her, and 4 months to himself. And of course, a 16-year-old presented with the goddess of sex decided to give his 4 months to Aphrodite. So he goes up topside for like 8 months of the year. That's fine. Look, I am not jealous. But I do know how to make things work in my favor. So he goes up and spends his time up topside. And Aphrodite thinks she's all smirky because she thinks she's won. She thinks, she went and flashed her whatever. She doesn't have to flash much. But, she just came down here and swooped down and got a teenage boy. And I was like, oh, seriously, do you think it's that hard to get the attention of a teenage boy? I mean, please, they are nothing but hormones. They're not worth having. Why would you want a teenage boy? They grunt and stink. Anyway. So she's up there and she's so full of herself. She's rather forgotten that this place gossips like hell and that my brother cousin Aries is kind of jealous. And he's the kind of jealous that you don't really want to mess with. So when my cousin brother Aries had a little bird tell him what his mistress was up to, well, my cousin brother Aries went and sent a boar out into the forest to deal with the problem. Needless to say, he came back home really quickly and hasn't left since. Yeah, Aphrodite was kind of pissed with me over that one. Not my fault. Cousin brother Aries heard it. I didn't tell him to do anything. A little bird told him. Little harpy bird. Still, little bird. Not my fault. Don't play games with me. I always win. So, Oberon has got his changeling child. So now it is time to start sorting out all of this mess. He now tells Puck, well, he gets his changeling child and then he takes the enchantment off to Tanya. And so she leaves with him. He's now got what he wants. And now is the time to start sorting all the mess out. He tells Puck to confuse these lovers so that they don't kill each other, and then gather them together and put them to sleep. And make sure that they're each looking at the right lady when they wake up. So then the opposite of the love potion is put onto Lysander's eyes. He has to remember to get the right one because he screwed up last time. He puts it onto Lysander, and Lysander then is back in love with Hermia, and Demetrius is now in love with Helena. And when they wake up in the morning, they find Theseus and Hippolyta out for a morning hunt, and with Hermia's father, and they are all astonished, and the lovers explain, oh, well, I'm in love with the person I'm supposed to be in love with now, and I'm in love with this person now, and so we want to get married. And all the older people are all flummoxed, and it's like, oh, okay, so they're going to have a triple wedding. They're going to have a triple wedding that afternoon or that day. Anyway, I was going to tell you about Theseus, wasn't I? I don't like Theseus. Theseus is the one who killed the Minotaur. Yeah, I don't like Theseus. Theseus and one of his little friends both decided that they were going to have a daughter of Zeus as their wives. Gods know why, because seriously, there are not that many goddesses. They just aren't made. There's only Helen. So Theseus goes off and kidnaps Helen, who becomes Helen of Troy, and he has a daughter with her. He has Iphigenia. Haha, I can say it. Iphigenia. He has Iphigenia. She has Iphigenia by Theseus, and she gives Iphigenia to Clytemnestra to bring up, which is why Clytemnestra is so very angry when Agamemnon kills her, because that was the only child that she didn't have by somebody who was a nasty, brutal, rapey, murdery person, which is what Agamemnon is. We'll talk about Agamemnon later. But that's why she killed him, because he killed Iphigenia. Anyway, she had Iphigenia with Theseus. Now, Theseus's friend had been listening to way too much of my mother's propaganda, my smother, about how miserable I am down here. And he decided that he was going to have me for a wife, goddess, queen, marry a mortal. Ugh. We see put an end to that. So Theseus and his mate come down here, and we already know what they're planning. And my husband says, please sit down. Because it's always a mistake to sit down when my husband invites you quite so openly and warmly. That one who wanted me, he's down here. He's like, you've heard of an elf on a shelf? That's what he is. He's my little elf on a shelf. He's not dead. He's not alive. He's frozen. I just move him about like a little garden ornament. Serves him right. We used to have a pair of them. I used to use them as bookends, but Theseus got rescued by Hercules. Father said I couldn't keep both of them. So anyway, that is why I don't like Theseus. So the mechanicals, or my demons, are lamenting the fact that Bottom has disappeared and he was their best actor, their leading man. And they are, and much they think, oh, he's been eaten by a monster. We're stuffed. We would have been really great because it's now a triple wedding, and it would have really made us. But lo and behold, he reappears, and they are all ready to perform. So they go up to the palace to hope to be picked for the play. The wedding is done. And Theseus, astonishingly, because they're so bad, picks my little demons. Okay, yeah, sure, fine. It's kind of under duress, because if he doesn't pick my little demons, he's in trouble. And I know they're all scared of my demons. And fortunately, the play that they are rehearsing is Pyramus and Thisbe, and they know Pyramus and Thisbe. Pyramus and Thisbe are among the dead down here. So it's a story they know. So they all make sure before the solstice pageant that they go and talk to Pyramus and Thisbe and find out actually what happened. So I never know exactly how the play's going to go down, because they all interpret it differently. All of them. And it's always fun. I always enjoy that part. So that's the end of the play. There's not much to this play. People get confused and then they get unconfused. It's a very strange little play. But they win their prize and they don't get flayed for couch cushions. Well, that's not their prize? I thought that was their prize. I don't flay them for couch cushions. If they don't do it well, I flay them for couch cushions. Duh. How do you think this works? So they get their prize and everyone ends up happily ever after. And I wish you a happily ever after summer solstice celebration. I hope you get lots and lots of offerings and have a wonderful, wonderful time. We're going upstairs to have a picnic in the forest, as we always do. Hecate's coming. I like Hecate. Anyway, so until we meet again, bye-bye.